Okay, I just want to do a little bit of an overview of some of the things to avoid, or one particular thing in specifically. To avoid undercuts, whenever you're making a mold of an object, say we are making a mold for this half and a mold for this half of this that's going to be an apple, the object is going into the mold itself, and you have to be able to pull it out, okay? An undercut is when that doesn't happen. But like if we were going to create a mold for this face, if we divided it in half like this, so that we did the face for one mold and then the back of the head for the other mold, that would be fine, okay? Because you can just kind of imagine, in fact we'll turn this. Okay, so we're pressing this, this face into the plaster and creating a mold that mimics this form. When we pull it out, you can see that there aren't any forms that overlap, so that it makes it like locks it into the plaster form. If we turn this over, if we look at this face on the other hand, and say we make a mold that is like this, and we press the face into plaster and create this form, we actually have quite a few undercuts, okay? Because any form that curves back around on itself, so that you know, the plaster is going up here, it's going to fill up here, and it's going to be hard to get that chin up through this this area that sticks out, and it's going to be hard to get this nose up over this little curve. Same thing with the mouth. The mouth curves down, the bottom lip and the top lip. So just try to envision how your actual casted form is going to come up straight out of the form. And if you see any area that if it comes straight out, it's going to be blocked by part of the cast or the mold, that is an undercut, and you don't want to do that. Another example would be a vase like that. Say you divided it in half, made your, well, let's see, that's okay, but if we went like that, so that when you pulled it straight out, it would actually catch right here, so that this part would break off. And so you'd end up with just a form like that anyway. Okay. Another problem would be if you made your cast with the top part versus the bottom part, so that when you pulled, so that this would be your mold right here, and as you can see, this whole area and this whole area would get blocked by this the shape of the cast, and it wouldn't come out. So you'd have this form that was stuck in your mold and it wouldn't come out. Okay, so so always think about how your form is going to be released by pulling it straight out, so that you always want the shapes to get smaller, so that they can open up and emerge easily. You can always add clay later, like, or what I do is I make the basic molded form with paper clay or paper mache, and then I can add details with additional paper mache or paper clay to elongate the nose, or to make the chin longer, if I want that those features to be different than what I have for the basic forms. Okay, so after you've allowed this to harden, and it can be depending on the type of plaster you use, it can be anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days until it's nice and hard and set. Then you can take your little form out, and sometimes it isn't exactly stuck, but it kind of creates a little bit of a suction, so you have to kind of pull it out like so. Okay, so then you have your little modeled form, and you have your cast. Okay, so now I have the back of the head on this one and the front of the head on this one, with the front of the face. Okay, and as I was describing, there is no undercut in the face or in the back of the head. So now, if I want to make a hollow cast, or I could actually make a solid cast, but I'm going to show you how to make a hollow one. I have some paper clay here. You could use any kind of air dry clay. I also have some mineral oil. You can also use petroleum jelly. And I'm just going to coat the plaster with the oil. And that'll just help it to release a little bit more easily. Now what I like to do is actually create a hollow cast rather than a solid one. So I'm going to take the paper clay, and you could use a different kind of clay as well. Make a nice thin sheet Okay, you want to push it nice and firmly. Whoops. And I don't want it to come up over the edges. So I'm just going to kind of curl all that down. Press it nice and firmly so that it goes into all of the different little areas of your cast, or of your mold. Okay, and then that will dry. Then I'll do the same thing to the back of the head. Okay, and then then you might need to let that dry for a couple of days, or at least probably a little bit over a day. But it really depends on how humid and warm the environment is. Okay, so this is the form that I used to create these two molds, and then you don't even have to wait until the clay is completely dry. You can see that it starts kind of pulling away from the plaster. And it just comes out very nicely. Sometimes there's a little bit of a suction but that's easily addressed. Okay, so I drew this line around the edge of my form so that I could trim any of the clay that kind of expanded beyond that. And this actually works a little bit better if the clay is not completely dry. It's okay if you end up with a little bit of clay that is a little bit less than this, but you don't want it to go beyond that line. But if it's a little bit less, it works out okay because we're going to actually put a little bead of clay through the whole thing so that, or around the whole thing, so that we can stick the two halves together. Okay. One of the dangers in taking it out before it is completely dry, though, is that the form is still a little bit flexible, so that can be a little bit of a problem if you end up kind of smushing it and distorting it. Okay, so I'm going to make a very thin little coil of the paper clay, and I've actually added a little bit of water to the paper clay to make it especially kind of soft, and it makes it a little bit sticky, as you can see. And then I'm just going to go around. Okay, and then I'm going to add another little, I'm actually going to add a little bead of glue. And it's okay if it runs into the inside. And you might have to kind of pinch the form a little bit to make it fit. I'm actually going to put a little bit of this glue around the other side too, just to make it a little bit stickier. Can use a pencil to help kind of shape it, get it lined up. Okay, and then you can use a smooth surface cylinder to kind of, oh, I guess we gotta wait till it dries just a little bit in some areas. Okay, and then we'll finish the surface after this is dried a little bit. Kind of double check and make sure that everything is fairly symmetrical. Okay, so then I'm going to coat this with a thin film of the white glue, and then I have a little strip of thin fabric. It's just unbleached muslin, and this will help to strengthen that joint.